Welcome back. Today's story filled with drama and unexpected turns. Hit like, subscribe, and let's jump in.
I'm sitting here now, with my Colt M1911A1 in one hand and a shot glass full of extremely expensive scotch in the other, waiting to be brought into jail. I placed down the empty shot glass and lit one of the generic cigars. I smoke on it briefly, and the taste and nicotine calm my anxiety. Yes, I'm waiting for the cops to arrive outside with their flashing lights and sirens. Why, you could wonder. Well, that story began years ago, when I met and fell in love with Olivia Carter. We both served in the Army at the time. I was in the second year of my second four-year hitch, and I had earned the rank of Staff Sergeant, SSG. I was active duty, with airborne and ranger badges on my sleeve. Lily has a journalism degree and served as a captain in the New Mexico National Guard. We met at a club on Fort Franklin one night and hit it off, despite the fact that she was a part-time officer and I worked full-time. All I knew is that her lovely green eyes and long flowing brown hair had me charmed. My name is Daniel Harris, and I saved enough money throughout my service to attend college at Princeton University using the GI Bill. Lily, it turned out, had attended Princeton University as well, and she still lived nearby. She offered me her address and mobile phone number and invited me to stay with her while I went to school. God, she's a tornado in bed. We were inseparable for my 4 years at Berkeley, where I earned a computer science degree. She loved me for some strange reason, and I liked her for more apparent ones. I won't lie and say I wasn't tempted to stray from time to time. After all, I wasn't an angel, but when it came to Lily, I knew she was the greatest thing to happen to me. Fast ahead a little, and we still hadn't had any children, not that I didn't want them, but she was still in the thick of her job, and I wasn't going to stand in her way. She created precisely the same thing as I did. I finished my degree and landed a terrific position at a global software company, while Lily was given the coveted assignment of writing a biography of a well-known general. She had just been promoted to lieutenant colonel in the New Mexico National Guard. Hey, let's just assume that Jack Nicholson was correct in A Few Good Men. I hadn't really lived until I met with a senior officer. Oh, and before you go shouting fraternization at me, we were not in direct line of command when we initially began dating. The trouble began when Lily had to go to Iraq to get General Parker's accounting for the book. She was supposed to be gone for 2 weeks but ended up staying for a month. When she arrived home, she seemed more guarded and distant. I asked her what was wrong, and she said she had seen something over there that really shook her. I could sympathize, having seen battle, and I hugged her tightly. We made love that night, and she appeared to come back to me. She was once again the Lily I had fallen in love with. A few years later, we relocated to Miami, Florida, and our lives were completely flipped upside down. First, I was hired by the CIA and assigned to manage the IT section at their main headquarters in Fairfax, Virginia. I was suddenly earning more money than I did in the private sector. Lily was overjoyed that I received the position, and she was also overjoyed to be working with General Parker again, providing additional material for his biography. The general had been named head of the CIA, so we were nearly working together. I met him at a social affair that I attended with Lily, and he seemed like a nice person. Certain things should not be accepted at face value. That night, my doubts began. I also met the general's wife, who was a lovely person, if a little hefty. I could accept her at face value. At the very least, she loved her husband as much as I did my wife. No, the suspicion arose after they performed 4 dances in a row and his hand dipped down to Lily's hips during a slow song. That was it, and I didn't care if he was the head of the CIA. I had had enough. I came out onto the dance floor and cut in as politely as possible. In other words, I had a fist clenched and was more than ready to deck the son of a witch if he refused to let me dance with my wife. Fortunately for both of us, he passed her over to me, and I informed her, quietly but unequivocally, that what I observed of his fondling her buttocks was not acceptable. Lily simply laughed it off, calling him an old lek. I attempted to shrug it off, but I discovered that the first seeds of doubt in her fidelity and his dignity had already been planted. When we arrived home that night, Lily and I had a major fight. Sweetheart, I am sick of that guy taking liberties with you on the dance floor. I don't give a damn if he's head of the goddamn CIA. That does not give him the right to feel up another man's wife, especially my wife, I added with a chuckle. Stop being jealous, baby, he was just flirting, Lily said, smirking. She may not have taken it seriously, but I was. I'm not just being jealous, and you did nothing to stop or discourage him. What does that tell me right there? I asked with hatred in my voice. Yeah, I was envious, but I was also witnessing certain things I didn't like, and they appeared to be rubbing it in. It should tell you to trust your wife, Alex, Lily said, bringing out the trust card. I answered, no problem, sweetheart, I trust you, but I don't trust him. I shook my head slowly. Well, heck, he's your boss, so you'd better trust him. Lily pushed her tongue out and crossed her eyes, reminding me of why I fell in love with her in the first place. I chuckled despite myself, and she rushed into my arms, kissing me passionately. I think it's sweet that you were willing to deck your big boss to defend my honor, she added. That's what I do, honey, I laughed and kissed her again, just as passionately as she kissed me. We fell into bed that night and made wild, passionate love to each other. I knew she had picked up on my mood when ID cut in on the dance, and I think she got a thrill out of it. I knew I could take the old man in a straight-up fight if it came to that. I still ran PT every morning before work and hit the gym 3 to 4 times a week to keep in shape. The great thing about running in the morning was that Lily ran with me and looked damn good doing it. She kept in shape too, and I was definitely enjoying the view of my wife's spectacular hips whenever I would fall behind during our runs. The only woman I knew with a better one than hers was Natalie Brooks, a member of my cyber warfare team at the CIA. As IT director, I wasn't just a tech geek, I was also a fully trained operative. Within a year, my background as a ranger helped with that. The cyber warfare division handled not just computer hacking but also other activities, so to speak, activities that often required a competent covert field operative. Tara is black and resembles Beyoncé, but without the long blonde hair. TLY, as she likes to be called, wears her hair short and in a pixie cut while keeping her hair its natural black color. Her skin was the same caramel color as Beyoncé's, and her lips, oh my god, those lips. Before you go saying what a dog I am, let me just say that I was happily married and was not about to cheat on my lovely wife. I was married, not dead, though I could at least win for a few more months. Everything returned to normal, with Lily transferring to the New Mexico National Guard. She was quickly on the fast track and was almost done with her book about General Parker. I read some of her transcripts and complimented her on a great job. She said that I was just saying that because I loved her, but I assured her that if she screwed up, I would definitely point it out to her. She laughed, and I had pulled her away from micros. The only thing that irritated me was that she had a folder on her desk labeled Top Secret. I knew she had TS clearance and all that, hell, so did I, but having a TS folder in an unsecured location was a severe breach of protocol. That night, I pushed it to the back burner in my mind and concentrated on giving her multiple climaxes. The next morning, I asked her about the top secret file. Oh, that's been declassified. What was the operation? I asked. It's the weirdest thing, she chuckled. A World War II operation named Wolfbane, where a U.S. An OSS Army Ranger and a British SIS agent allegedly entered Hitler's bunker and killed him, along with a group of werewolves. I believe it was written up as a joke, she remarked, laughing. I chuckled, too, since that would have been an excellent April Fool's Day joke. What was the Ranger's name? I inquired, giggling. First Lieutenant Henry James, she smiled. As if anybody would believe that. The SIS agent's name was Emma Foster, she said. We laughed and joked about the fake operation, which included a report from General Patton, who must have been in on the joke. We looked at the file together and laughed at the thoroughness of the joke. My suspicions were alleviated for the time being, but something in the back of my mind just felt wrong. I couldn't put my finger on it. Tara arrived to work the following Monday, and I found myself grinning to myself. Okay, boss, what's the joke? She lifted an eyebrow at me as she stood there, arms crossed and hip pushed out to the side. Just an old declassified file that Lily brought home, I grinned, telling her about the supposed operation during the last days of the war in Europe. She broke down laughing when I told her about the fake report from General George S. Patton. We spent most of the morning joking about it and troubleshooting some systems when they showed that attention was needed. The rest of my team took care of the majority of it, and my gut feeling that something was off returned after a few. Tara saw something was wrong, and she came into my office and closed and shut the door behind her. Normally, I keep my emotions concealed very well, but this just kept bothering me, and Tara could read people better than anybody else. All right, boss, spill it. What the heck is going on? She sighed. I groaned. What I'm about to tell you won't leave this room. Understood. Understood, Lucas, she nodded. Tara called me boss more than anybody else in our tiny piece of Langley, and she only referred to me as Lucas when she knew something was significant. Okay, I think Lily might be thinking about cheating on me, if she hasn't already, I said, telling her the truth. Her eyes widened. She better not. If she cheats on a good white lad like you, I will take you up and teach you what true love is. She gave me a grin before seriously adding, do you really believe she would do that to you? From what I saw at the general's dinner the other night, yes, I do believe she would. I went on to describe in detail how she had been dancing with General Parker, our big boss, and her attempts to convince me that it was just him being a dirty old man. He could have just been drunk. Tara shrugged, even though she knew it was foolish, and grimaced as soon as the words left her lips. Yeah, he would have had to, she muttered. Damn, Lucas. They both practically disrespected you in front of everyone. That was something I didn't want to think about. Yes, they had both mistreated me in front of many of our friends and co-workers, but Tara wasn't there that night. What I am going to do is illegal and dubious. If you don't want to be caught in the crossfire, leave my office right now. I looked her in the eyes. Her wide lips were set in a firm line as she met my gaze steadfastly. I am with you, Lucas. Whatever it is, I am with you, she said, nodding. You might not be when I tell you what I'm going to do, I texted her. Just tell me, and whatever you say doesn't leave this room, she said, taking a seat across from my desk. Thanks, TLY, I smiled. I then detailed my strategy to her, and she nodded support for each point. After 15 minutes of working out the finer aspects of my plan, she suggested a few more things we could do. I was reminded of how excellent a friend she was and how serious she took her job. If a hostile foreign power learns that the director of the CIA is having an affair with the wife of one of his subordinates, you can bet your life that the same hostile foreign power will take action to undermine national security. Tara and I decided that we should keep this operation between us and keep everyone else in the dark. My job now included securing the safety of my country, even if it meant outing the director and my wife. If nothing was going on, that was fine, but I wasn't going to take that chance. I set up a dummy email account and used the system here to tap into the general's and my wife's phone lines. It's usually the purview of the NSA to monitor communications like this, but here at the CIA, we had the same equipment for the same purposes. We set up the monitoring and proxy servers for what we were going to do, and I was able to set up VPNs to the director's computer and Lily's home computer as well. Tara went unnoticed while I cloned the general's cell phone and cloned Lily's cell phone. I felt like I was betraying them, but only a little. I knew that if something was going on, I would be doing my duty to protect my country and gathering evidence in case the general's wife and I needed it for a divorce. That night at home, she also gave me the requisition surveillance equipment for my house, where I bugged my home phones. Tara went unnoticed. It took 2 days to set everything up, and business went on as usual. I had my cell phone set up to receive alerts if any of the flagged emails were sent to my new email account, and Lily and the general's cell phones were never used for anything remotely resembling sexual activity. It was all kept professional. The week after that, Benghazi happened, which was a cluster from the start. 2 private contractors and our U.S. ambassador to Libya died that night. Tara had set it up on a 24-hour update, which I had agreed to at the time, because anything more frequent would have been difficult to explain during that time. Lily was out with the girls in her New Mexico National Guard unit that night, or so she said. When the excrement hit the rotating oscillator, General Parker was also incommunicado, and his phone was turned off. That night, however, I was wide awake and waiting for Lily to get home. When I checked the emails, I almost hurled my iPhone across the room, but I calmed myself and phoned Sophia instead. Hey, Lucas, what's happening? She asked, yawning. I am passing these emails to you, tell me what you think, I replied, then forwarded them to her from my laptop via proxy servers. She read them and was quiet for a bit before exclaiming, holy crap. When she received the setting emails between Lily Mitchell and General Parker. That's about the size of it, sweetie, I answered, boiling with wrath. I was already intending to identify the miserable hole in the divorce procedures and share all of this data with Rachel Parker as soon as possible. But first things first, as they say. When Lily arrived home after 303 hours, I was sitting up with a beer in one hand and a sheath of papers in the other, having printed out all of her emails from the previous day with the general. I told Tara to keep a low profile and that if anything bad happened, I would take the heat. Oh, honey, are you still awake? She inquired, with a shocked and somewhat guilty expression. Yep, waiting for you, darling, I answered with a sarcastic tone. Have fun with the general. Oh, I mean, the females, I inquired, my smile devoid of amusement. What are you talking about, Lucas? You've been drinking, she attempted to bluff. I'm talking about this right here, my darling faithful wife, I said, standing and handing her the emails I'd printed out. Each one had a complete response from General Parker detailing what they were going to do tonight in sexy emails that, if they had been texts, would have been sexting. She gasped as she read each one, but her response wasn't what I had expected. You spied on me. She screamed. No, I'm so sorry, or, honey, let me explain, she went straight on the attack. Wow, I discover you cheating on me and you've already sent them to a lawyer in preparation for your divorce, and all you can do is accuse me of spying on. Go to hell, I yelled at her. Don't worry about your lover. He's going to be sued for alienation of affection, and they'll name him in our divorce papers, I continued in a more conversational tone, giving her a venomous grin. What did you do? She said. I have already submitted your emails to Mrs. Nelson. She'll probably file for divorce on Monday, unless she's okay with him cheating on her, I said, smiling more benignly. At least we don't have kids. My dad had helped me restore my 1982 Camaro Z28 when I was in high school, and by the time I was 16, we had fully restored the classic sports car. I was pulled over for speeding the first time I drove it after getting my license, but the cop let me off with my bag contained several changes of clothes, some personal items, and my Colt M1911A 1.45 ACP pistol, which I adored. Despite having a few pieces replaced over the years, it was still in perfect working order, with the original barrel, grips, trigger, hammer, and slide. I made it 15 miles to my safe house before they found me. I saw the black SUVs in my rear view as they closed in on me quickly. I gunned the powerful small block and watched. No, the main problem wasn't the FBI pigs behind me, it was the FBI chopper pacing me and keeping its spotlight on me as I drove. So when I pulled over to the side of the road, got out, grabbed my pistol, and started squeezing off rounds at the bird, it veered away. I saw, much to my surprise, the spotlight shatter from probably the luckiest shot in history. I couldn't help but laugh at that and got back in my car as I heard the SUVs trying to catch up. I gunned it again. After 75 miles, I pulled off the road onto a dirt road that led to my safe house. To clarify a few things, the CIA has no jurisdiction to operate within the United States of America, and it is illegal for the CIA to do so. If you believe that the CIA does not operate within the United States of America simply because it is illegal, you really need to get your head out of your rear end. With that in mind, I had appropriated an old CIA black site in rural Virginia to use as my safe house, which looked like an old farmhouse, dilapidated and crumbling, and was supposedly once a stop along the Underground Railroad before and during the Civil War. Once I had the codes for the site, I deleted it from the CIA registry, as part of my contingency plan. As the director of the CIA, General Parker had a lot of resources at his disposal. He could call on all branches of Homeland Security if he needed them, and with me on the loose with a lot of evidence that could end his career, he figured he needed them. I sent the emails to Rachel Parker from my main email account, but my dummy account was still clean, so I sent Tara an email to her new dummy account informing her of my whereabouts. I then sent the emails that General Parker and Lily Mitchell had sent back and forth from a nearby coffee shop and a second dummy account, Spy Disguise 101, to every major news network, including Fox News. I also sent recordings of Lily's conversation with the a-hole the night I discovered what they had been doing. I was now the subject of a worldwide manhunt. Tara kept me up to date on what was going on at home. She said that the a-hole had talked his wife out of a divorce for the time being, and so far, none of the news networks had run my evidence, even Fox News was holding back for some strange reason. She used her burner phone, and I used mine, so we were pretty much untraceable, unless the NSA had voice recognition software turned on, which they probably did. Tara showed up unannounced at the safe house a few weeks later, and I still had enough canned rations to last me another 5 years. In a great show of solidarity, all of my IT team resigned after hearing about what had happened, and because I had forwarded all of the emails to them, they decided to go into business for themselves. Okay. I take it you don't like visitors, she said. I dropped the weapon at my side. You could have called ahead first, I hissed, then laughed. She flung herself into my arms and hugged me tightly. I'm sorry, Lucas. I didn't want to risk the NSA tracking my call to you. What about Tails? You're probably being followed, right? I said. I lost them, she said with a smug smile. She then moved down and kissed my cheek. You need to shave. I'll shave when I don't need to live on the lam anymore, I sneered back. What brings you here? I asked eventually. I just wanted to see you and make sure you're all right, she said as she let me go and led me into the living room. We sat on the sofa together, and I gazed at her. God, she's beautiful. That can't be the only reason. What's happening back at the camp? I asked, referring to Langley. She shrugged her eyes. The big news networks are finally probing your accusations and proof, but your fugitive status has been kept hidden from the press, which is both good and terrible. Good because they aren't using the press to spread my image in order to locate me, and bad because if word spread, they would have to take my proof seriously. I nodded in understanding. What are you going to do? She asked. To be honest, I had no idea what to do anymore. I could wait it out and see how long it took the a-hole to finally try to get the local law enforcement to look for me, or I could force the issue and head up to New York and make a surprise appearance on the Today Show, but that would be too risky. The news people had my photo and that I wasn't available for comment, but nothing on the manhunt that was being conducted by Homeland Security. I was simply, if I was COR, I grinned at her and said, I'm going to cut the head off the snake. Her mouth grew wide in surprise. Lucas, you can't, she said. If you kill him, she trailed off, shaking her head. Do you trust me? I inquired, staring her in the eye. Of course, I do, she said, nodding once. Then trust me now, I said, and took her in my arms. She tilted her chin up, and our lips met in the most sensual kiss I've ever had with any woman in my life. Our tongues danced together as her arms came up and encircled my neck, and she moaned into my mouth as we kissed passionately. She didn't feel the needle I pushed into her voluptuous neck, but the tranquilizer took effect right away. You cannot follow me where I am going. You can't be a part of what I have to do, I whispered as I picked her up and carried her into the bedroom. I laid her out on the bed and checked her pulse to make sure I didn't give her too much. She was breathing regularly, and her heartbeat was strong. Good. I smiled and kissed her lips tenderly, then walked out. I felt like crap, but I didn't want her caught in the crossfire. I grabbed some weapons and ammo from the arsenal inside the bunker, as well as 2 sets of handcuffs. I had test-fired some of the 9mm ammo with the Uzi and HK MP5 suppressed, and it was still in decent condition with no misfires. I chose the suppressed MP5 SMG and loaded up my Colt with some .45 ACP rounds. I holstered my weapon, slung the MP5, and walked out to the underground garage. I smiled as I opened the door and tossed the SMG onto the passenger seat. I buckled up, started her up, and listened. I could have taken Tara's car, but I didn't want anything I did tonight to come back on her, so I opted for my trusty Camaro. If I died tonight or was captured, I'd at least have one last drive to remember. I made one call from my burner phone before I arrived at my destination, identifying myself and saying that everything would be clear if they met me at a specific address. I soon arrived in General Parker's neighborhood and pulled up in front of his house. I parked crossways behind Lily's car in front of the garage, so that any car attempting to leave would have to run over mine. Lily was also present, which made my plan even better. I grabbed the HK and made my way quickly up to the front door. I rang the bell and waited with the SMG at the ready. Diana answered the door and gasped. I put my finger to my lips in the universal shush gesture, and she just nodded, her eyes wide with shock. I entered, and she backed up a bit with her hands raised. I leaned over and whispered to her, Diana, don't worry. You're the only innocent person here. I nodded and smiled, I'm not going to murder anybody if I can avoid it. Okay. She swallowed and nodded. I guess so, she said uncomfortably. Ma'am, you just have to believe me. I'm not going to murder any of them, but they've been cheating on us for a long time, I added seriously. She nodded again and smiled nervously. I slipped my left hand into my pocket and started the recorder. I motioned for Diana to follow me into the living room, where Nelson and my soon-to-be ex-wife were sitting. Nelson smiled at her when she walked in ahead of me, but the smile froze and disappeared when he saw my ragged appearance and the firepower I was carrying. The traitor himself, he yelled, but I drew my weapon on him before he could stand. Is that what you told your lovely wife, a-hole? I growled. That my evidence of your infidelity was nothing more than an attempt to compromise national security? Lily, outraged by what I said to her the night I left home, muttered, We can explain, baby. No, you can't explain, I snapped. If anybody is a traitor here, it's you two. The suppressed MP5 made a puff sound as the bullet smashed the home phone. I said in my best command voice. General Parker looked like he wasn't going to cooperate, so I fired the phone between them before he could respond. Lily was already taking off her clothing, and the general was doing the same. Wow, Lily, you must not have been cheating on me because of his size, I laughed angrily at the general, who was a nice solid 2-inch soft, he'd get to maybe 5 hard if he was fortunate. Lily flushed and turned aside in shame, but even nude and terrified, she was still a beautiful lady. Soon, the whole world would know how stunning she was naked. What are you planning to do? Diane inquired. Well, I believe they should be humiliated in some way, do you agree? I inquired, smiling. Actually, I suppose I do agree, Diana responded, and I saw that neither of them attempted to deny the affair when presented with it directly. Diana smirked at her nude husband, you creep. I hope you're fired for this, she scoffed at his little stature. Have you ever kept me pleased with that tiny thing, Diana said. I had to smile at that one, knock him down a few pegs. Good job, Diana. What happens next relies on you giving me the truth. Since we know that the affair has occurred, I'm going to ask a series of questions. Your honesty will determine your destiny. Just know that I've learned a lot more than you would believe in the previous few weeks. I grinned, putting on my best bluff. Diana stepped over and smacked her husband across the face. He took it, as I had focused my weapon on his head, and stared at me. Oh no, sir. Don't look at me like that, I hissed, aiming once again at his head. How was it going to be, then? Would you want to educate me? You were never supposed to find out, he said calmly. Of course I wasn't, I said, just curious, how long have you two been screwing? All pretense of politeness was abandoned. For years, Lily remarked shyly, since your first trip to Afghanistan. I affirmed, and she nodded. Yes, I'm so sorry, Lucas, she replied with a desperate expression on her face. Sorry you were caught, right, I growled. I know my almost ex-husband is sorry he got caught, Diana cried, then reached down and grabbed him by the balls, causing his face to become red with pain and embarrassment as his wife squeezed his testicles until he dropped to his knees in agony. I bet that hurt, I said, smirking. No bet here, Diana said, looking at me as she stepped away from General Parker. Lucas, could you do me a favor and shoot my husband's little bird off? She asked. I don't know if I could hit something that small, but I could give it a try, I said with a wink. She began giggling. Stop it, Lily screamed, you have your confession, just let us go. Sure, go ahead, I shrugged. But you will leave this house naked, I warned her, then stepped forward and produced the first pair of handcuffs from my pocket, putting them on her as she stood there stunned. I pushed her towards the front door. When she got to the door, I opened it and shoved her outside, right into the lights from the news van parked on the street. Her hands were cuffed behind her back, so in an attempt to be modest, she fell to the grass and curled up in a ball. I laughed, as did Diana, when she looked through the peephole in the door. Diana, go out the back. You do not need to be there for what is going to occur. It would be better for your dignity if you left, I told her. Go out the back and around to the other side gate, which is around the corner. Trust me, I will not harm your spouse. I trust you on this, Lucas. You're a good man, she murmured, hugging and kissing me on the cheek before heading to the kitchen and back door. I moved back into the living room, bringing the second set of shackles from my pocket. General Parker was still struggling to rise from his wife's ball busting when I approached him and easily cuffed his hands behind his back. Now, General, it's time for your day in the spotlight, I snarled as I walked him to the front door. His limp was very pronounced from what Diana had done to him. I opened the door and shoved him outside, and he tumbled into the grass beside a still-stricken Lily. I waved to the camera crew from the door, then closed and locked it. I turned off all the lights and went to the General's home office. And so here I sit, waiting for the authorities to show up. The news people must have finally called 911, as I sat there drinking the General's scotch and smoking one of his Cuban cigars. Damn it, if I was going to be seriously executed or hauled off to jail, I was going to enjoy myself a bit before that happened. I sat with my Colt on my knee, sitting there. It gave me a sense of peace. The old pistol had seen a lot of action over the last century. It had been made in 19. The phone on the General's desk rang, interrupting my thoughts, and I took it up. This is General Den. I'm afraid the General is unavailable at the time. Can I take a message? I leaned back and rested my feet on his desk, taking another inhale from the Cuban stogie. Mr. Carter? Mr. Matthew Carter? The man's voice inquired. Yes, Matthew Carter here. Who is this? I responded. I'm Patrick Lackland from Channel 10 News. I am chatting to you from across the street. Can you explain why you stripped your wife and former employer nude and threw them out of his home? He said. I briefed him on the entire situation, explaining how I was now the target of a global manhunt due to evidence that my wife and the General were having an affair. I also stated that I had even more evidence than before, including their admissions that they set me up to take the fall so they wouldn't be implicated in any ethical violations or viewed as a threat to national security. Why would an affair affect national security? He asked. Because if a hostile foreign power found out, they could easily be blackmailed, I shrugged as I lay it out for him. But now that it's all out in the open, so to speak, I believe I've earned my right to be heard on this. My wife, for reasons unbeknownst to me, started an affair with General Needleidic out there. I can confidently declare that sex was not the problem, nor was a lack of affection or care. If I had to speculate, I would say she was drawn to his authority as a general commander in the United States Army and as director of the CIA. That was then I heard the sirens arriving. It had taken them long enough, and whomever had phoned them had apparently waited until they were confident I was inside. Well, Mr. Preston, I suppose my ride is here. I'll be surrendering soon. However, before I do want to say one thing, I remarked. What is it, Mr. Carter? He asked. I am sorry, Tara. If I had to do it over, I would not have sedated you. I hesitated. Mr. Preston, please air that one on every newscast between now and tomorrow evening, I requested. I believe that can be arranged, Mr. Carter. Good luck to you, he replied as I hung up the phone. So it was now just a matter of luck. Well, I figured my luck couldn't get that much worse. Hell, I had used up my lifetime allotment of good luck here tonight, being able to pull off my revenge on a scorned woman. I picked up my trusty Colt from my lap, ejected the magazine, and racked the slide, ejecting the live round. I then placed the round in the magazine and made sure the sleeve when the SWAT team broke down the front door. I stubbed out the cigar and downed the rest of the scotch in the glass. I replaced the top on the bottle and stood up with my hands in the air. The first man through the door saw that I was already in surrender position, so he had his buddies cover him and moved forward to slap the cuffs on me. He then advised me of my Miranda rights, which I acknowledged when asked if I understood. I exercised my right to remain silent, only for my attorney. I told them to get Ethan Moore, I said. I dialed Tara's burner, and she answered on the 6th ring. Hello. She said groggily. Good. The tranquilizer had finally worn off. It's me. Look, I apologize for what I did, but there was a good reason for it, I added quietly. You drugged me, she mumbled. Yes, I did. I did not want you to follow me and be locked up with me. I'm now in prison, but you can get the complete story by watching the news. Patrick Lackland of Channel 10 got my exclusive interview, I said. I grinned despite myself. Everything was now out in the open, as Lily and her general a-hole would have liked. Lucas, I'm coming to bail your sorry bum out of jail, and then I'm going to kick your buttocks up one side and down the other, she said, her voice now crystal clear. Yeah, her adrenaline burned off the rest of the tranquilizer in record time. I will let you to kick my buttocks up and down as many times as you want. At least I was able to keep you out of jail, which is worth it to me, I grinned. Okay, smartass. I will be there in the morning. I have the number on my caller ID, so we'll be there in a while, she said. Thank you, sweetheart. I really owe you one, I said, smiling. See you in the morning. Goodbye, Lucas. I'll be there soon, she said before hanging up. I was led to the courtroom, where Rick was already present, and I was cuffed. Rick was already there, and I did push-ups, sit-ups, and even pull-ups by tilting the bunk beds on end and using the bar at the head of the top one to do my exercises. Rick and I had met in college, where he was going to law school. He had moved out to Virginia several years after Lily and I moved, but we had regained contact with him and his new wife, Amelia. She's a sweetheart, so there was no swinging going on. Rick is kind of like me, he doesn't share, and I couldn't blame him one bit. I was also going to ask him to handle my divorce. I stood up and explained that I had been used as a scapegoat for my boss, General Parker, and my wife, his lover Lily Mitchell, and that I had sent Rick the evidence in an email, which he had filed away for future use. When Judge Reinhold, no relation, arrived, he told me to sit down, and Rick made a compelling case for my release on my own recognizance when asked why. As Rick and I walked out of the station, we were confronted by a furious Natalie Brooks, who smacked me across the face as I smiled. I deserved that, I murmured, more for Rick's sake than my own. You deserve a lot more than that, white boy, Tara murmured as I massaged my cheek. I agree, at least you didn't have to spend the night in there, I grinned as I hooked my thumb over my shoulder at the police station. For some strange reason, the feds didn't even show up to press their own case against me. They had to know that I'd been caught, but they were keeping their distance for the time being. Of course, I got my Colt back after showing them my CIA ID. It appears that in his haste to declare me an enemy of the state, General Parker failed to fire me officially, so I just smiled and accepted. I returned my grandfather's sidearm and went out, only to be confronted by my aforementioned assistant and probable boyfriend, who was furious with me at the time. Her face softened, and she wrapped her arms around me, squeezing me tightly. Never do that again, she said. It was a mandate that I would gladly obey. I want, as long as I don't have a reason to do it, I said. Good, because I don't want you in jail or worse, she said. The charges against me were dropped due to extenuating circumstances, which I was grateful for. However, it appeared that General Peterson was going to be called before Congress to testify about his affair and the threat to national security that it had caused. The kicker was the recordings I sent to all of the news networks, posted on YouTube, and identified the director of the CIA and my soon-to-be ex-wife. My Camaro was still where I had parked it the night before, and after I picked it up, I followed TSA home. My house had nothing I really wanted. Hell, ID made sure I took everything I wanted when I ran, and when we got there, she handed me a spare key, and when I went inside, I removed my wedding ring and threw it away. Julia and I were already divorced, and TSA saw me do it. "Hello, John. Does it imply what I think it does?" she asked. "Yeah, that means that as far as I'm concerned, Julia no longer lives," I said. "Rick has her served today, wherever she is. Hell, she's probably moved in with her jerk boyfriend. I am giving her nothing except the home. Screw alimony, spousal maintenance, or whatever it's called. She owes me so much. Hell, I'm pretty sure her parents have seen the evidence now," I sneered. "Honey, I know we'll probably just end up a rebound sex toy, but I want you," TSA said as she moved up into my arms. She stroked my bearded cheek and then took my hand with a smile. "Come with me, baby." I turned off my cell phone ahead of time to avoid receiving any calls from her irate parents. "I think I could do that," I smiled back, and let her lead me to her bedroom and the bathroom attached to it. She sat me down on the toilet seat, lathered up my face with shave gel, and then proceeded to shave me, her hands gentle and the blade steady. She looked into my dark blue eyes with her dark chocolate orbs, and we smiled at each other as she finished cleaning my face. Of all the things I'd done with Julia over the years, nothing was quite as personal as letting TSA shave me. After she finished, she bent down and kissed me softly. "Now it's shower time," she said, pointing to the shower. "I'll grab some towels," she said before leaving. I rinsed off, soaked up, and heard the shower door slide open. When TSA returned with the towels, she grinned as my eyes bugged out of my head at the sight of her. Her dark chocolate skin was flawless, her slender waist flared out to wide hips, and she had the best damn ass I'd ever seen in my life. I had never had such intimate experiences with anyone, including Julia. She didn't say anything as she rubbed her body against my soapy torso, and we kissed as if it were our last day on earth. Our moans grew louder as our need for each other grew stronger, and we made love. By the time we were done, the water had started to cool, so I turned off the shower and we toweled each other dry. Julia and I had a great sex life, and it had been very fulfilling, but this level of intimacy that I had discovered today with TSA was unlike anything I'd ever experienced before. We screwed and made love 3 more times that day, and after each time, we talked more and more about who we were and what we wanted out of life. She confessed to a crush that had lasted since we'd first met, and I confessed that she was the only woman who turned my head even when I was in love with. We laughed, and we realized we were destined to be together. I warned her that we would have to take things slowly, and friends with benefits would do for the time being. She nodded and agreed. 6 months later, we were back with our team in Cyber Warrior at the CIA, and TSA became more than just my assistant. We became lovers first, more than just friends with benefits, and as soon as my divorce from Julia was finalized, I asked T to marry me. She said yes, tears streaming down her cheeks, and I took great pleasure in slipping the ring on her finger. Julia went back to the West after the divorce. I gave her nothing, and she asked for nothing. We divided the home sale 50-50, and that was about it. She kept her vehicle, and I kept mine. I adore my Camaro. General Peterson's divorce papers were served shortly after Julius and his wife took him to the cleaners. I gave her every scrap of evidence I had on them both, and the judge was more than pissed off about the circumstances that the general had put everyone in. He was forced to resign as director of the CIA for, you guessed it, national security reasons. It appeared that my point about his having an affair was taken seriously by the president himself, and after he assaulted me, he was brought to the hospital and spent a few weeks there. When he was released, he vanished, and no one saw or heard from him again. Julia and I had chatted a few times, but I wasn't willing to go out of my way to see her. T and I invited her to our wedding, but she never showed up. Oh well, the last I heard, she was in Portland somewhere. Tally and I were married, as I previously mentioned, and moved back to Denver, Colorado, together. She introduced me to her family, and I transferred from the CIA to the FBI's LA field office. TSA resigned outright from the CIA, and she just informed me that she is pregnant. I am going to be a father. When I think back on my life with Julia, it pales in comparison to the life that Tally and I have created together. I've never been happier. Thank you for watching. Was retribution worthwhile, or did it go too far? Please let us know in the comments.